Thank you, Dr. Sasinder, for the nice introduction in the beginning. And to take it from where Dr. Alvaro has left, he covered beautifully the different aspects, how different stages of rehab is proceeding. So I'll be jumping on to the end stage of rehab because that's what we are looking at when we talk about return to sports. And as we know, this is a very important topic, and it is a hot topic in today's scenario. Return to sports. Everybody is talking about it because of the re-injuries that are pretty common in the knee, especially, and also the revision surgeries are not as great as the one which we do as a primary repair. So it is a very important topic to start from where Dr. Alvaro has left, and he outlined the nice statistics which are coming out with the re-injuries and the contralateral injuries. And what do you mean by return to play? Return to play is having the full medical clearance to go ahead and do everything the athlete wants to do. So that is whether it is your strength and conditioning session or it is your practice sessions or your competition. So having the near normal, if not normal, ability to go back to the sport that the athlete is a part of. Right. And as Dr. Alvaro had pointed out, previous injury is associated with up to a fourfold increase in the risk of re-injury. What do we mean by that? So somebody with a previous history of ACL tear that or a meniscus tear, there is always a chance of re-injury going to happen because the neuromuscular system is not going to be optimum even after uh, several rehab or even after a good rehab. So there's always a chance of re-injury. And post ACL reconstruction, there is even more a risk of re-injury, and many do not return to previous performance levels. There is a dip in their performance level. Either they take a little lesser role in the team, and they don't. The peak performance is a problem. So, as Dr. Alder had already pointed out, there is little original RTP research, and there is no standardization, and it can be a source of confusion to the sports medicine team between the sports surgeon, between the coaches, the strength and conditioning coach, between the physical therapist. So there can be a lot of confusion because no standardization is yet achieved. Right, and like Dr. Alvaro spoke to us, we have to weigh the risks and the benefits, and the athlete has to be told about what he can expect after the reconstruction. And taking the reconstruction is the main thing, although there can be a overuse injury which can happen in the knee, like the patellofemoral pain or the patellar tendinopathy. So we'll stick to the ACL part of the end stage rehab. So 90% of the professional players, what do we mean by that? The elite players or the players who playing at the top league levels are able to go back to their peak performance after 12 months. Whereas the general population who are amateurs or recreational, only about 44% are able to return to competitive sport. And as we know that one of the complications of having a ACL tear, whether you manage it surgically or non-surgically, is the osteoarthritis. So which also is a risk which has to be told to the athlete what to expect um, out of the surgery or out of the rehab. Right. The past history of ACL reconstruction is the strongest risk factor for a new ACL injury, whether it is the injured leg or the uninjured leg, like Dr. Alvaro had pointed out earlier. Most of them have a shorter careers post ACL injury because they're not able to go back to their peak level of performance, whether it's basketball or football. There is a shortcoming, and we have to look at women as a separate population because of the anatomy, the wider pelvis, and the valgus angle that puts on to the knee. So post the end stage of rehab, they have to undergo a lot of conditioning before they get back to sport, and there has to be a special emphasis on the dynamic valgus or the valgus load that falls on the knee and how to counter it. Uh, the neuromuscular factors also play a role because you need to work on your hip external rotators. So because of the wider pelvis again, so to counter the valgus stress that can fall on the knee. Hormonal difference also plays a role in women. So they are a special population that we have to look at when you're considering return to play. And Dr. Alvaro pointed out about tissue healing. every tissue has a different healing time. You have to appreciate that, whether you're dealing with a patellofemoral pain or a patellar tendinopathy or a quadriceps tendinopathy or a meniscus tear or a meniscus repair. So they have a different healing time. It's important to understand and appreciate the healing time, the biological healing times when you're doing your considering your rehab. And you have to also take into different consideration when it comes to healing the systemic and the local factors which can affect tissue healing. And in the process of returning to sport, your first priority is to make sure the injured tissues heal without any trouble. So what we do is a protective healing stage. We do the rehab exercises keeping in mind the graft that has been put in place or the repair that has been done. So you need to condition the muscle without hurting the repair what the surgeon has done. So that is your first priority when you start your rehab. And then once you know the healing time is completed or the biological fixation is completed or the revascularization is set, then you look at preparing the tissue for return to function. And in the end stage, you do a proper rehab and reconditioning. I'll call it as a prehab. What you do in a prehab to prevent injuries is something which you need to do post your clinical rehab. So there has to be an on-field rehab that has to go on before you clear the athlete to return to sports. Like I told you earlier, the first thing is you have to make sure there is an optimal loading. That's what I will tell. Optimal loading is so you'll give the right amount of stress, which is not too much or not too less for the tissues, keeping in mind the tissues that are affected and how they react to the stress that is falling on the knee. Whether there is too much anterior translation force or a posterior translation force, or a valgus load or varus load, you need to keep that into consideration when you're doing your rehab. So controlled therapeutic stress is what is needed to optimize the collagen matrix formation. You have to do overloading. Without overloading, the tissues are not going to get stronger, but it has to be an optimal overload. And specific objectives to be met in each phase before you set on to the next phase. So just to uh, summarize what Dr. Alvaro has already spoken about. So whether you're talking about a patellofemoral pain or a patellar tendinopathy or a ACL repair, you have to follow a certain system. Yes, there may be an overuse injury and this is an acute injury, but you need to know where to do what and when to progress. So remodeling phase is what is critical when you talk about return to sports, right? Your job is to make sure there is optimization of the tissue function. Uh, your neuromuscular system is firing well, so the proprioceptors are at its peak performance. So if there is any perturbation that happens, they are quick enough to react. So you have to work on maximizing the GTOs, that is the Golgi tendon organs, and the capsular receptors, so that the proprioception is at its peak. And the closed kinetic chain and the open kinetic chain exercises have to be started because muscle strength and muscle endurance are of maximum importance. We'll be discussing in the coming slides why it is important. So, and another important thing is you have to know what the sports demands. For example, if there is an IPL game of cricket and it's going to be a power which is mostly going to be exhibited, so then you need to know this athlete has to train to that level of fitness or to that level of strength. So there is a three-stage model when we talk about return to play. First, you evaluate uh, whether the athlete is fit enough to get back to sport. And then you evaluate the pros and cons. What is the participation risk? And the third one is your decision modification. So we're going to deal about it. We'll look at it in the coming slides. So when we talk about the evaluation of the health status, we call something called as a baseline testing, which they have to satisfy before we take them to the next stage. So the first stage should be you have to be completely pain-free. The effusion should be bare minimum or not there at all. You should have got full range of motion, and you should not have any instability in your joint or in your function. And weight bearing should be comfortable. That's the first criteria. And you will do your clinical stress test if it is needed, and you will do a muscle strength and endurance. It's not that every athlete has to be put through an isokinetic testing. They can do a manual muscle test, or they can do a handheld dynamometer test just to document where they stay. if the biological healing has happened, it won't be a bad idea to do a 10 RM test and to document the strength, and to make a note of different milestones that you achieve at different timeline. Right. So proprioception is another thing which you need to check. It can be, you don't have to really put them on a biomechanical ankle platform system. You can just make them stand on a single leg and see how they're balancing, how the vestibular, the ocular, and the peripheral proprioceptors are functioning. You need to optimize that. And if everything is satisfactory, you can also check for power. Right. So Dr. Algar had already mentioned about MRI just to see the healing status and what is the tissue, how the tissue is lying inside, and if any blood investigation is needed is also done at this site. So once you have cleared the clinical stress are negative, right, and you tested the muscle strength and endurance, you tested for some proprioception, you tested a bit of power, like power can be a double leg jump. You do not have to load it single leg, but you can do a vertical jump test with the both leg, right? So the first having satisfied the first criteria, you do the second test, second criteria, and then you need to go to a functional movement screening, right? So what we are ideally looking at is the function and the sports specificity, how this athlete is going to move, right? So this is a small little tool that you can use to screen your athlete before you take them to the next stage of rehab. Right. This is a deep squat, what you see in the first slide, where the athlete has to go all the way down. Yes, you will take into consideration if there is a meniscus repair that has happened, right? Provided there is no biological restriction for your rehab, then you'll do a deep squat to see how functionally they are able to do, how stable are they, how the knee is looking, and how the trunk alignment is it in line with the tibia. Same way with the hurdle step, you check the mobility of the swing leg and the stability of the stance leg. So this gives you two feedbacks about the swing leg and the stance leg. So you will alternate and check how the athlete is able to do. So this again is an inline lunge. So this will tell you whether there is any valgus strain that is happening, whether the knee is able to go in line with the front heel, right? And if there is any valgus stress, or if they're not having any core control or stability, we can find out through this. And this one is a mobility test just to check the entire posterior chain of the lower limb, especially the hamstring the tightness. And this one is called as a stability push-up. This is done to check the core stability. So what is important is, like Dr. Alvarez said, you have to focus on core strengthening when you are in the protective phase itself, right? And you have to strengthen your hip muscles without hurting your knee joint or without hurting the repair that you've done. The trunk stability push-up is again to check whether your core stability is achieved. The last one is a birdie dog, which where the athlete was taking his one hand up and one leg off. Right. Once you've satisfied that criteria, you need to do a battery of sports fitness tests, which are needed for that particular sport the athlete is competing with, whether it is a shuttle badminton or whether they're doing a team sport like a football or hockey. So you have different battery of tests that you need to do. So agility, speed, power, speed endurance, power endurance, dynamic balance, reaction time, the coordination, right? All these have to be tested. So the yo-yo test is something which you do for your endurance, right? Or you do a beep test for endurance, like that. So depending on the sport that the athlete is in, then you modify the test that you have to administer. Right, and the skill tests are sport-specific tests. Like for example, somebody is into football, then you have a box drill or a different type of assessment that you do based on the sport that you are associated with. Right, and sports training and non-competitive. Once you clear all this, then the sports training and the non-competitive warm-up games are practiced. And whenever you have a data to compare with, and most of the sports physios will be having a pre-participation data. Like before the injury happened, they have assessed, they have done all this battery of tests that you see here and the previous screen what you saw. They will be having a pre-participation or a pre-injury status. So it will be always better to compare with the data that you already have, especially when you're dealing with elite athletes. So you'll know that in the off season there was some assessment was done, and you can always compare with that. And as Dr. Alvaro had rightly said, psychosocial evaluation is very important. The patient-reported outcome measures are also important. So that gives them a big confidence on what they are able to achieve functionally, and they're able to self-evaluate. This is a simple slide that you see for a agility test that we do, a T test. This is a 40-yard dash that is to check for speed. This is a Y balance test where the athlete is moving the leg in front to the right lateral and across. And this is simple agility testing, or you do sports specific testing. So what you do for your athletes. So talking about the most important thing is the RTS battery that we spoke about. Yes, all the assessment what you did earlier is typically done by any sports physiotherapist for any when they are with the team. So when you're dealing with somebody with the ACL reconstruction or coming out of a surgery, you have to make sure all these criteria are satisfied. The first one is a landing error scoring system. We'll be seeing the picture. I'll be explaining that to you. You have to make sure the score is less than 5. So the landing error scoring system is not only to check the quantity of the movement, that is not only to measure how much they're able to jump or leap, it is also about to see the quality of the movement, right? It is important that we check the quality of the movement, just not quantify what they're able to produce. And the limb symmetry index, that is, you have to compare the right or the affected leg and the non-affected leg for different hop tests. You have a side hop, you have a triple hop, you have a single leg hop, right? So you have to check those, and you have to also do a single leg vertical jump test to check and strength and compare with the other leg, right? So if you have a previous data is well and good, but if you don't have a previous data, then you need to compare with the normative leg. So unfortunately, the normative leg also takes a pounding after any surgery because there will be some kind of weakness. So you never know what the real strength of the athlete was, right? So the next one you look at is if you have an isokinetic testing, then you have to do an isokinetic strength evaluation and compare the quadriceps and the hamstring strength at different speeds between the right and the left leg. And you'll ideally like to have 90% of the strength of the non-injured leg on the injured leg. Right, and the next most important one is the hamstring and the quadriceps ratio, which is very important for the interplay and the stability of the knee. So for women, you expect a 55% ratio, that is the quadriceps will be comparatively strong. If quadriceps is about 100 kg one arm, your hamstring will be about 55 kg one arm. So the ratio is also important to prevent further injuries or to predict future injuries. Right, this is a PROMS, that is a patient-reported outcome measure. You have a ACL return to sports after injury questionnaire, and you also have a IKBC questionnaire which you need to administer to see how they are progressing, because this plays a major psychological role in the athlete's mindset, and it is one of the major tools that you need to start using when you're looking at return to sport. So this is a landing error scoring system. You see how the athlete leaps forward like a long jump, and then they do a vertical jump. So you need to check the quality of the movement. It is a 1 feet box. From there, they jump forward. The forward, there is a marking which is about half the height of the athlete. Right. So when they jump, you see how they land. You see whether there is any valgus stress, what is happening in the ankle, what is happening in the trunk. Is the hip going down, or there is rest mobility on the hip? Is the knee pushed forwards? Right. What is the angle on the knee when they land? Where do they land? Do they land on the toe or do they land on the heel? All these have to be checked, right? So this is an important predictor, and it has given a scoring, right? And this is a single leg hop distance test and the triple hop distance test that you do to compare with the non-injured leg. And this is a side hop test that you do for a 30-second duration. You'll check between the right and the left leg. Right, this is a vertical hop, single leg vertical hop you do to see how high you're able to clear the surface. You have softwares for it. You have a mobile app as well to check what is the vertical leap or the power that they're able to generate on the leg. Right, these are isokinetic testing, which I'll not go much into detail. Right, coming to the last few slides. So once you've done the evaluation of the various health fitness factor, now you need to look at the participation risk. So what is the type of the sport the athlete is playing? Is it a contact sport or non-contact sport? It can be a non-contact sport, and still they can hurt their knee, right? And whether it's an impact sport, is it a high impact sport? Something like a basketball, where they have to jump and land, or a volleyball, or a skiing, right? So you need to take all this into consideration before deciding whether this athlete can go back to this particular sport, or do they have maximum risk where they have to choose something else. right? An alternative sport, right? Uh, Another thing what you can look at is the position played, right? For example, it might be a tennis player, singles player, right? Maybe this is the second time they got their revision surgery done, or you think there is a high risk of this athlete getting injured again, so you need to ask them to do a doubles, switch over to a doubles game, right? Limb dominance also plays a major role because the leap or the jump, whether you're a triathlete or a sprinter, comes from the dominant leg, so you have to know which leg is actually affected. Um, Next is a competitive level. Like I spoke about it a little earlier, like somebody who cannot be pushed to a high impact, high intensity sport, like an IPL game or like a T20 game. So they can be moved to a test match cricket, or they can be moved to a one day cricket. So you can change the competitive level based on your risk evaluation. Right, and you have to also see whether this sport allows them to protect their leg, whether they can be taped in the knee, whether they can have a protective brace. So you need to evaluate all that before you decide on your return to play. So position modification is another thing. What time your athlete is getting injured is in the off season or in season, right? So do they have enough time to recover and go back? And setting realistic goals is also very important. Right, and you have to decide whether you want to make the player play in the league matches or you want to keep them for the knockout matches, right? So, as a coach and as a team, as a sports medicine team player, you need to take a decision. There is always going to be a pressure from the player and the coach to allow you to get you back to the game. So you have to resist that, and you have to always weigh the pros and cons, because there's one area where the sports medicine specialist has to take the decision for the player. So you need to make sure that you take the right decision. And change of roles, like so most of the players, like once they become veterans, they become coaches or mentors, right? So you need to look at that as well based on what you see. That you should also be aware that they'll be masking the injury. They might be taking painkillers, or they're talking taking a steroid shot, which will be masking the injury. So you need to keep that into consideration. You cannot go by how they perform in the test, because they might have been using masking agents. And the fear of litigation is also a major factor for sports medicine specialists. You see in the BCCI pulling up the physios for allowing players when they are not 100% fit, right? So the fear of losing the job is also quite large. So what is the lacuna in the RTT training or the end stage training or the on-field training, what we call about? Uh, we as sports medicine specialists, we have to have the confidence to progress the athlete, just not think about the graft. Yes, the biological healing is complete. We cannot keep on protecting them, because these guys have to do something which a normal person do not do. So you have to motivate them to train on explosive neuromuscular performance. You have to check the quality of the movement, and most importantly, most of the athletes, they get injured towards the end of the game. Like for example, the 40-minute session, the injuries happen towards the end of the session because the fatigue sets in. The muscles are not firing enough. The neuromuscular system is not to its 100%. The proprioceptors are not great. So before you decide the return to play, you have to make sure you test in a fatigue state, right? And lack of sports-specific training is another major drawback in our country, or most countries, where on-field rehab is not done effectively or efficiently. As I told you, there is a set principle that you have to follow: specific adaptation to impose demands. So you have to make sure the overload principle is applied throughout the rehab period. The lack of focus on the sport-specific fitness is also another important thing. Whether you're a fast bowler, you have to have a different level of fitness. Um, if you're a footballer and you're the forward, then you need to have a different level of fitness, power, and stamina. Right. Just to cut this one short, so we know what kind of injuries, I mean, Dr. Alvaro already underlined it, so I will not go into it. Psychological factors, return to play before 9 months, how it can have, uh, bad consequences. Right. So what we know is, right, better jump landing position, hop performance have a greater likelihood for the return to sport, right? But the chance of second injury cannot be identified using a RPS battery. So uh, we cannot rely whether it can prevent another injury, but it will help you to clear the athlete to go back to the sport. Right. So what we have to do, there should be a, like Dr. Alvira mentioned, if there is a meniscus repair, then we need to have a clarity on when the weight bearing can start, because the longer we delay the weight bearing, it's going to affect the return to sports as well. And what are the range of motion restriction? Most of the time, we're not allowed to do a full squat till about 6 months time, whereas the athlete has a time frame. The season is there, so we have to work around it. Timing or criteria to start open kinetic chain quadriceps exercise is also important when we can start. Still, there is a lacuna in it. So hopefully, like with further researches, we'll get to know uh, how we can start. As of now, we do a 90 to 60 range without causing much of a translation to the graft in the um, repair phase of the rehab. Multi-component test batteries are recommended because, as I told you, you have to check the agility, speed, power, you have to check proprioception, you have to check all the dimensions of the sport. So when you decide on the return to play. Most importantly, movement quality has to be examined. Most of the time, we get to see the scoring, we get to see the numbers, but we don't know what was the quality of the movement. That has to be checked. Fatigue factor, right, like I mentioned earlier, you have to take that into consideration. You need to optimize the late stage rehabilitation or the end stage rehabilitation, we don't we don't really are keen on. We know this athlete is able to do certain things, then it's left to the coach to do. So we have to make sure that the athlete satisfies all the RTS criteria and does all that is needed to be sports fit. Right. And most importantly, prevention is the key. So the FIFA has already started 11 plus programs. So preventing knee injuries is the key. So strengthening, prehabbing them should be given highest priority. So once there is an injury, the athlete is very, very rarely goes back to their full potential of peak performance. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you to all of you for your patient hearing. Thank you.